Well, ladies and gents, boys and girls, we have a plethora of things on the to-do list for today, and I just got kind of the final news on the whole buying the house situation, some very juicy news. So I figured what a better time to kind of explain the whole situation. I didn't go into too much detail last time because everything was still up in the air, so now I'll kind of give you guys the whole story. So first thing we got to tackle is the LS Miata being a mud truck. At the Clutch Kickers event, it rained, there was mud, and I mean, this thing is filthy. I pressure washed it after I unloaded it, but it was like it was raining while I was pressure washing, so I couldn't really see what was clean and what's not. And clearly, most of it, 95% of it is not clean. So we're gonna back this out and give it a proper bath before this stuff settles in and becomes part of the paint. So for those of you who didn't see the last video about the whole house buying situation, basically the long and short of it is I'm trying to buy a house to move back to the Orlando area. Not Orlando like downtown, but somewhere within 30, 45 minutes of the things I normally do instead of the hour and a half that I'm at now. So the idea was to buy a house instead of renting. That way I kind of get 2 for 1, basically buy a house with a shop or with room to build a shop. That way my mortgage covers my house and my workspace as opposed to paying the same amount in rent that I'd pay on a mortgage, except also having to rent a shop separately. So that was the goal. I started looking, trying to see what I could find. And I found a couple of good options for basically something where I could, try to buy the house and have enough room to build a shop. Just a nice small house, build my shop, be happy. I don't need a big house. I don't care to have a big fancy house. I just want 2 bedrooms, living room, kitchen, bathroom. That's really all I need. So I found those and started looking into building a shop, and it gets kind of complicated when you have a smaller house because you kind of got to attach it. Otherwise, if it's detached, it can't be bigger than like 25% of the square footage, and there's this whole slew of things. It varies from area to area. So I was like, man, it'd really be ideal to find a place that already had a shop that I could at least work out of for now and figure all the rest out later, so I don't have to move in and immediately build a shop, So as I was looking, I found a house that had a garage and what looked like a detached garage and a really nice driveway set up. And I was like, that could work for now. I'd rather have 1 big shop than 2 garages, but I don't know. That looks like a decent sized 2-car garage. So Ben and I went down there to take a look at it. The area was great, perfect location. Super close to parts stores. You could literally walk to 2 parts stores, less than 5 minutes from OSW. Really, really good location. We get there, the house setup is solid. It's solid. It's got a much bigger than I realized 2-car garage, a ton of concrete driveway area, plenty of room behind the shop for both my trailers, my enclosed and my open, and then the shop was actually about 30 by 35, so big enough shop. And the idea was I could use the shop as a dedicated workspace, use the garage as storage. So store 2 cars in there, have shelving, store like parts and tires and things like that to keep the shop as just a workspace, not have to clutter it up storing stuff. So the concept was great. However, there was a major pitfall to the place, and the fact it was like a pitfall, a bonus and a pitfall at the same time. So again, the location was great. The neighborhood, not so great. Not so great. It was one of maybe 3 houses in the entire neighborhood. And when I say it was a neighborhood with a bunch of trailers in it, I'm talking trailers with boarded up windows and like piles of trash outside. Like again, not the ideal neighborhood, but I can't live in some fancy neighborhood. I don't really want to live in a fancy neighborhood because then I'll have the Karens next door calling the cops on me anytime I'm freaking washing my car, starting my car up, or loading my trailer, you know. So there is a give and take there. But there was a fire station right across the street, a school behind that. So in many ways, not a good neighborhood. And obviously there's not a ton of people who are going to be willing to buy a house like that size in a neighborhood like that to like raise a family. So resale value, not going to be great. So that was kind of a big conundrum after looking at it. The location was solid, just not the most ideal neighborhood. So we drove home, put some thought into it, really kind of weighed the pros and cons. Let's get the car out here and start washing it. I'm gonna use my heat gun on the exhaust manifold and see if this thing's misfiring. It sounds a little funny. We put it through a lot of abuse this past weekend. Also, before you tell me I'm washing my car wrong, I know. Never learned how to properly wash a car because I usually don't have cars nice enough to properly wash. So yeah, anyway, on the drive back, it's about an hour and a half to Orlando from here. Ben and I are kind of going over the pros and cons of the house and the setup, and how it'd be nice, but the neighborhood is kind of sketchy, and we couldn't really come to a conclusion on the whole neighborhood situation, which was really the big hang up. The house wasn't in perfect shape, but it was definitely like livable, could use upgrades, and definitely looked like it needed some stuff to be fixed. But I was good with that. I kind of wanted something that I could fix up and make my own. So anyway, kind of came to the conclusion that the best way to go about it was to set a price cap. If it's anywhere under this number, then it's a no-brainer. It's such a good setup for the money regardless of anything else. If it's between that number and this number, then I really got to put some more thought into it, do some more research, etc. So decided to make an offer on it, started low, and the seller came back at the got to think about it number. So we hit them with the no-brainer number, the top of the no-brainer number, and they accepted it. So I was like, holy cow, dude, this is actually happening. So before I kind of signed the final offer, me and Ben had the idea to go down there at night and see what the neighborhood was like at night. Like, is there going to be drug deals going on in the street? Is there going to be domestic disputes, or is it going to be just like a normal, quiet neighborhood? So we went down there at night. It wasn't late, but it's probably 9 o'clock at night, and it was super quiet. It was exactly what you would expect from any normal neighborhood. A couple people outside, people inside. There was no one like having a party. It was a very, very chill, laid back, quiet neighborhood. Exactly what you would want in a neighborhood. So I was like, cool. I was really stressing about this because this house setup is even better than I thought after seeing it. It's got these big oak trees in the front yard shading the house, which is like, for some reason, a big thing for me. I like trees. I like having shade, especially here in Florida. I can't do the whole house like subdivisions where they just plow a field and put houses there, no trees. Can't do it. So anyway, it kind of ticked all the boxes for me, right? So this is the one thing. Relieving, right? To figure that out. It's like a roller coaster, Oh man, this is sicker than I thought. Oh, but this is a huge problem. And then we're like, okay, cool. Like, it's good. It's good, and they accepted the offer. Like, couldn't be better. I'll move on to the other side. So we scheduled the inspection, kind of last minute. Honestly, hard to get an inspector out even within the 10-day window. The inspector comes out, he's looking at the house, and I take Chrissy to it for the first time because she hadn't seen it yet. And she likes it, she's into it. waiting for the inspector. So the inspector is like, all right, so the well breaker's tripped, so the well doesn't work, so I can't test the plumbing. One AC breaker's tripped, it won't turn on. The other one turns on but just buzzes, so it's broken. And like, this is the first 5 sentences out of this guy's mouth. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm pretty much checked out at that point mentally. I was like, well, it doesn't really matter what else he has to say, because like, I'm gonna have to bail on this house, you know? I was like, okay, if there's one major thing wrong, maybe we can negotiate that into the price and we're good. But we're talking about like several major systems wrong. So then he's like, oh, it's got termites. It's got this, you know, the electrical system is wired incorrectly and has to be redone. Like, just this whole slew of things. So went from roller coaster high back down to roller coaster low. So my girlfriend and my agent talked me into having an electrician come out. You know, they're like, maybe it's something simple. Why don't we have an electrician look at it? I'm like, you know what, you're right. This is such a nice setup. I don't want to give up on this house if I don't have to. So while we're waiting for the electrician to go out, we went and looked at a couple other places. Pretty disappointing. One house on like a half acre, small little house, seemed like it'd be a good place to build a shop. No possible way of building a shop there. Thing number 2 was a like 5 acre plot of land a little bit further out in Geneva, and the 5 acres that looked like the nicest, driest 5 acres I could find on there was about 3/4 of an acre to an acre, surrounded by swamp. So that was my backup plan: buying land, putting like a prefab tiny house on it, and building a shop or building a shop house, something along those lines. Trying to just kind of not finance much of it if I could, because I'm not big on financing things. I've never financed anything. I have credit cards purely to build credit to buy a house, but I pay them off every month. I've never financed the car. You know, I've always found ways around it, like with the truck, with the Fummins. Instead of financing a newer truck, I just built a truck that I could be able to easily work on myself, but also offered the modern comforts of a newer truck. So anyway, the goal would be to not finance anything, but buying a house is it's an expensive prospect. You kind of have to. You got to move quick when you're washing in Florida, because the sun will dry the soap like before you can spray it off. So now my backup plan, which I was like, I almost like this plan better because, you know, it's less financing, less debt, is out the window. And I'm like, dude, what are we gonna do? Like, there's really no good options here. Are we gonna have to buy this house and replace all these things? Like, it seems like the only viable option at this point. Like, this is a bummer. You know, this has gone all sorts of wrong. Both backup plans fail, main plan fail. So anyway, we go back to the house. The electrician's there, he's messing around. There was like a pop breaker that had to be replaced. So we go outside to the breaker box that has the AC and the well and stuff. There's a main disconnect that was turned off. That's it. Just literally, it says main disconnect at the top. It was turned off. So we turn that on, boom, both ACs come on, both of them work. House gets cold, well works, all the water works out of all the toilets and all the faucets. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what a huge relief. Like, these major systems that I thought weren't working are working just fine now. Like, we're good. This is awesome. So again, roller coaster. Right now we're going back up. Things are good. So I scheduled the appraisal for like 3 days later. Wait to hear back. All right, now this is reasonably clean. We'll pull it back into the shop, move on to the next item on the list. Worst part about legit 3-piece wheels, they absolutely suck to dismount. You'll see why. But yeah, so the appraisal, waiting on that to come back. So a couple days after the appraisal was supposed to happen, I emailed him and I was like, hey, have you guys got the appraisal back? Because I'm stressing about that, because that's kind of really the last big thing. The underwriter's already gone through and done my conditional approval, so they've checked out everything. They said, like, you know, you're good. They needed a couple little things, nothing major. They could still say no at the end, but the appraisal was really the last big thing. If it appraised right, we're like 95% of the way there. So I'm stressing about it, waiting and waiting for it. And they're like, oh, it got rescheduled to like 2 weeks from that day. So I was like, oh man, I've been stressing about this whole time, staring at my emails, and like I gotta wait even longer. The problem with 3G wheels is that you don't have like a bead, a lip on the front side. It just slowly slants down, so you've got to get the edge of the tire all the way to like here to get it off. So with these being a 205 on an 8, what I have to do is basically kind of get the front side off, mount it, and then we'll have to pull the rear bead off and then come back, break it again. It's time consuming, but it is way easier to mount stretch tires if you're stretching. So yeah, while I'm waiting to hear back about the appraisal, kind of thinking about things, and the termite thing has really got me thinking. You know, I'm like, okay, well, he didn't really give me a good description of how much damage there was. You know, he said, oh, they ate up to the surface, so like, I don't know, you know, it could be a lot, it could be none, it could be a little. So I like to think in worst case scenario. So I'm like, okay, it's in the ceiling joist. Worst case scenario, all the ceiling joists have to be replaced. Now, how would you even do that? Because that's where the drywall's at. You'd have to like gut the house. How? One reason to not kill your tires, stab yourself with them. So I'm like, man, this is important. Trying to kind of get some info on it. Can't really find much. I'm doing some research, and it's mostly like wood houses and stuff. You know, no one's really talking about it in like the ceiling joist of a block house. I mean, it's a block house. At least like the main structure is fine. So couldn't really find how much it might cost and whatever. So anyway, I call the inspector, see if he can kind of shed some further light on the issue, and it basically told me the same thing, you know. He's like, I was walking, I stepped on one of them, it crunched. If I wasn't holding on, you know, it was hollow, I would have gone through the ceiling, and you know, there's no way of knowing how many are damaged because they eat to the surface, and you have to go like pull all the insulation out and all this stuff. So I'm like, man, that doesn't really help me here. See, and then we gotta pull the tire off like that, put it back down here, and break the bead again. The rest of the way this time. Since I couldn't really get a straight answer, I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna go to the house. I'm gonna go up in the attic, and I'm gonna look for myself. I wanna see how this is. Now, I'm no termite expert, but, you know, if I go in there and every board I step on starting to crunch under my feet, probably not a good idea to buy the house. However, if I go up in there and every one I step on seems fine, and maybe there's a couple that have an issue, you know, then that's really not a big deal. That's kind of what I was expecting before I started overthinking this. So, go up in the attic, step on every single one, check from end to end. I find the exact one that he stepped on because it was at the end. It was like the last three showed visible signs where, like, you know, if he stepped on it, like the top layer would kind of crunch off. And stood on it, held my weight, no problem. Obviously, I was holding on just in case, but didn't have any issues holding my weight. The other three the same. That area was like concentrated to where the termite signs were, and then there was one over the garage which also had termite signs. So I was like, okay, so it's like 4 of them, and they're all still structurally sound. In theory, we should be able to, that's the worst part. This plastic head is nice because it doesn't scratch your wheels up, but it's really difficult to use. So yeah, I'm like, okay, I'm good with that. Roller coaster, going back up, right? I was really stressing about the Termite thing. You know, that if anything's a deal breaker. You know, replacing an AC unit's one thing. It's money, but it's straightforward. But having to replace all the ceiling joists in a house, not very straightforward. But after seeing that, was like such a huge relief. It's because at least for over a week, I'd been thinking about this, and to finally see it with my own eyes and be like, dude, this is fine. This is totally fine. Huge sigh of relief. So now at this point, I'm like, all right, man, I've kind of gone down every overthinking avenue with this house. I've thought about everything, looked into everything. Like, at this point, I am 100% good with it. I've just got to go through at this point. But I'm good with it. I'm happy with it. The things it needs, I'm happy to fix. I'm happy to update it. Like, we are good. Sorted through all of it. We're good. Roller coaster back up. Appraisal left. So roller coaster's a little wavy at this point. Let me dismount this other tire and then we'll continue this. All right, last wheel dismounted. Keep these in here. Gotta take them apart and ship them out. But yeah, so we're coming up on the appraisal deadline now. And I mean, now it's like, okay, well, one, it's got to appraise right. Two, we got to get the appraisal back in time per the contract. And we're coming up on the deadline, so get the appraisal back literally like the day before the deadline, right? So this is probably the highest of the roller coaster. It comes back right at purchase price. Like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Look, we're 95% of the way there now. But we really are. It came back in time, came back right. Whew. Sigh of relief. So I made sure up until that point to not get my hopes up about this, not make any real plans, real commitments, not even let myself think about, I mean, I did to it a little bit, I couldn't help it, but not even let myself really think about how I was gonna set up the shop and what I wanted to do to the house or anything, because I knew it could fall through. And I told myself that once we got to the appraisal point, if the appraisal came back good, I could get my hopes up. Because really all it's down to then is the underwriter's final review, which if they, basically approved it the first time, I feel like there's a pretty good chance it's going to get approved for the final, the final approval. So at this point, I finally let myself get my hopes up on this place. I've been so good about keeping them down and setting my expectations low. Finally, hopes are up. We gotta go grab our new tires. Had some fresh new tires delivered. These are 16s. I had maxed out all my 15s. I had all of them mounted, so I got some 16s. They didn't come in before the event. But I've heard good things about these tires. Ingus A1s. I'm excited to try them on the LS Miata. So, you guys are probably wondering, what's the punchline? Definitely could tell this is going a different direction than we're all good. It is. You're not wrong. So sitting on the couch, watching FD actually, get a call from my real estate agent. Hey, how's it going? And when she says, okay, I was like, oh no, this is not good. She goes, so the seller decided that they no longer want to sell the house. I was like, I knew something was gonna happen. Like, oh, it's just so frustrating because this is the point where I had finally got my hopes up. I had finally gotten to the point where I was like, this might really happen. This is really, really, really close to going through and being, my house that I can do what I want with, my shop. Like, we're close. I'm gonna really start to get excited now. Boom! Dream shattered in one phone call. So here, let's get these tires back there because it is freaking pouring down rain like it does every day in Florida. Start getting them out and I'll explain kind of what has transpired since then. Every day in summer. I need windshield wipers for my glasses. make a pit stop inside and change my shirt. It was soaked. So the seller's reasoning behind not selling the house is that his elderly mother, he doesn't want to put her in a nursing home, he wants to put her in that house instead, which to me makes no sense, because one, the house needs wiring work and really several other things before it's like truly livable, especially for an elderly person. Two, it's owned by an LLC out of Washington. So like I don't even think the person lives here. I don't really know. I'm not sure. But that's the reason. That's it. So just on the in case, we kept pushing through. And just today was the day where everything went through. The loan went through, the approval, our closing date is in 2 days, and the seller has confirmed that he no longer wants to sell the house. Still holding strong on it. And unfortunately, I don't really have a ton of options, you know, because even though it's a blatant breach of contract, you can't physically force him to sign the contract. So I could sue him for, I think they call it specific performance, but that could take years, so that's a tough option. Or I just basically kind of get screwed and have to just walk away, get my deposit back, that's about it. So, I mean, I've had time to process this because, you know, it basically happened a week or so ago. We've just been kind of trying to see if we could get it through, but still like a huge bummer of a situation. Oh, I'm gonna have to cheat it this time. You know, because I spent so much time and money and effort and rode the emotional roller coaster of, oh, this house isn't gonna work out, oh, it's gonna work out, oh, it's not gonna work out, oh, it's gonna work out. Finally got to pretty much the finish line. Just for the seller to say no. Just for them to say no. I mean, like, what's the point of a real estate contract if you can just say no? And like, there's not really much the buyer can do about it. Fill the old cheetah up. Just bring this over there. Now, this wouldn't be so frustrating if it wasn't so hard for me to find what I need. You know, I really need a house with at least enough land to build a shop and a place where I'm allowed to build a shop, or ideally a house with a shop so I can move in and just get to work. And I found that in the location I wanted, price point, like, was the perfect setup for me and my needs. Definitely needed to be renovated, but I was okay with that. So now, you know, I've been looking pretty much ever since they said they don't want to sell on this. I haven't found any really great options yet. There's one that's decent, but it's a significant amount more money. One second. Definitely like the most frustrating situation. Of my entire life. I don't think I've ever had a more frustrating situation. And it is funny because when I had told myself the whole, once we get past the appraisal, get your hopes up thing, I'm like, really? Besides underwriting, the only other thing that could happen is the seller could decide not to sell the house. What do you know? And the worst part about it all, too, that literally neither my real estate agent or my mortgage broker, who've both been in the business 15, 20 years, have ever had this happen. Ever. Never has happened. So nobody really knows what to do. We're all kind of in the dark trying to figure this out as we go because nobody has ever had this happen before. And of course, it happens to me. So it's one of those things, you know, if I was just like emotionally attached to this house and it was just a house, it'd be one thing. But it's really hard for me to find that kind of setup. So that's what makes it so much more frustrating than just like, oh, I really like this one. So, So I found a couple other options. None of them are spectacular. There's one that's pretty good, but it is significantly more expensive. And my whole thing with buying a house is, you know, again, I've never financed anything. I don't want to finance some house that's expensive and then be, you know, stuck and trapped into some big mortgage. I'd rather buy basically the cheapest house I can get away with, where I can have my house, I can fix it up inside, make it as nice as I want inside, have enough room for my stuff and my shop, and then pay extra every month to try to pay it off in 12 or 13 years instead of having to ride out a 30-year mortgage. So I mean, everyone's different. Some people would probably rather just get the nicest house they can, but my goal is to have my house paid off as soon as I can. I mean, if I found the absolute perfect setup, maybe I'd be willing to deal with the high mortgage. But like again, ideally I'd rather just get something cheaper, something with good bones, you know, like a block house, fix it up myself, make it exactly how I want it, have my shop, have my stuff, pay it off, be done with it. So, I mean, hopefully I can find something like that. If not, maybe I can find something more expensive, but it feels like basically since the time I put the offer in on this house and then from there to like having to look again, it seems like everything has gotten way more expensive. Could just be my imagination, but you know, before everyone talked about how the market was high, I was like, I mean, these prices seem pretty reasonable to me. I don't know anything about it, but like, they seem reasonable to me for what you're getting. Like, I'm okay with that. You know, I'm saving money compared to renting. I'm at least building equity in something, and the biggest thing for me is just being able to have the shop at the house and not have to rent a separate shop. Having a permanent place to live, permanent place to work. So, I don't know, boys. Gotta go look at a couple, see if either of them are good options. All right, the final tire is mounted. Such a satisfying feeling to have your tires mounted and ready to go, like before there's even an event that you're planning on going to. It's just nice knowing that whenever the event is, you can just throw your tires in the trailer and go. So glad we got that done and handled. But yeah, to me, the most frustrating thing about this whole situation really is just the fact that I put so much on hold. You know, I didn't start on any new projects. I didn't order parts for cars. You know, everything in my life has been on hold for over a month now because of this house. And I was like, you know what, it sucks and it's a sacrifice, but it's gonna be worth it, you know, if everything goes through and we get the house. And for it to not go through no fault of my own, definitely a bummer. But I don't know, man, at the end of the day, I was thinking about it when I was driving the other day, and I'm in such a better position than I ever could have imagined. If you told me 5 years ago, like, you're gonna be doing the things you're doing, you're gonna have an LS3 Miata and a come and swap Ford truck on semi wheels and an enclosed, like, I never would have believed that and to have done the things I've done. So as much as this particular thing is a bummer and it's a setback, it's not the end of the world. It could be a whole lot worse. So hopefully I find something else. The biggest thing for me is just finally having, you know, a dedicated workspace that I can set up exactly how I want, organized how I want, and just have that as like my own workspace. That is the biggest thing for me and the main thing that I want out of all of this. So we'll figure out some way to get there. You know, there's multiple different ways to skin the cat, as they say. Kind of a weird term, but yeah, for now, we're kind of still up in the air. We're going to be diving back into projects because, I mean, even if we do find another house tomorrow, it's going to take another month or so. So hope to see you guys for that. If you want me to bring you along for the house buying process, let me know. I didn't do it the first time because I felt kind of nervous. I wanted to focus on what I was doing, but now that I've gone through the process once, I feel like it would be kind of fun to show you the process, but I don't know. We'll see. Let me know what you think. That's going to be it for this one. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Goodbye.